So now we're going to be looking at idolatry versus other transgressions. The Tanya will now challenge the notion that all transgressions are an equal violation of God's will as idol worship from a point of Jewish law. So you think about it, that's wild. Like, what? How are we going to say that? That every single sin is equivalent to idol worship? And he's not just saying this in a spiritual sense. Alter Rebbe is going to prove this according to Jewish law. Let's dive in. When it comes to idolatry, a person is meant to allow himself to be killed rather than bow down to an idol. As we've seen this phenomenon so many times throughout Jewish history, that people choose to die rather than convert, even though not necessarily was their lifestyle a lifestyle of living Jewish values, but the core essence of their being, that was undeniable. They cannot give up their soul. So that's with idolatry. We have this obligation to die rather than bow down. Well, other transgressions, we follow a different principle. Saving one's life take precedence. Hayecha kodmen. And this principle we learn in Gemara Yevamot. So question. Is this because idolatry is more severe a transgression than others? Meaning, why is it that this principle of Hayecha kodmen, right? Like take your life comes first. Like, why doesn't it apply to idolatry? Maybe idolatry is worse of a sin? No. The requirement to transgress rather than be killed is to be understood as a value. It's not as a value of judgment, which prohibition is more intense than others, right, in God's eyes. That's not it at all. But according to sages, there's another principle that other transgressions, the other transgressions fall under. Violate one Sabbath for a sick person in order that he'll be able to observe many other Sabbaths. Meaning, why is a person supposed to choose their life rather than die when it comes to other mitzvahs? Is because of the principle you're going to do future mitzvahs. Okay, so right now you're violating one Shabbos, right? You're going to the hospital because you need medical attention. But that means that you're going to be able to do other mitzvahs in the future. You're going to be able to keep the next Shabbos. And so that precedence, that premise is much stronger and is outweighs the idea of that single violation of Shabbos. So why doesn't this ruling of live so you can do more mitzvahs in the future apply also to a person who's forced to commit idolatry or die, right? So say, okay, bow down to one idol and keep 1,000,000 Shabboses, right? Like, why doesn't this principle apply? The difference between idolatry and other transgressions is only in the rebound. After other transgressions, the soul reconnects with God. After idolatry, the soul remains in a state of exile from its source. Meaning, after that sin, right, the soul reconnects. The soul, is reconnected. The person can continue doing other mitzvahs. But with the act of idolatry, that person's soul is in this compromised state. It's in this state of exile. It does not have that immediate reconnection. So what happens to the soul while transgressing one of the 365 prohibitions? Like, what happens to my soul during that moment of sin? During that act, the divine soul is in a state of exile, is trapped within the animal soul, which is sent to the energies of Klipa and Sitra Achra, right? It is being taken prisoner is being hijacked. My Ruach Shtus, the spirit of delusion, is telling me, yes, go for that sin. And therefore, the most precious part of my being, my soul, my divine soul, is being trapped in this act and dragged down to the Klipa and Sitra Achra to become a chariot for them. So really, the Alter is painting this picture of godly soul abuse. Why? Why is this so damaging to my soul? Because first of all, the soul is not choosing it. The soul wants to stay in a pristine state. It's not consenting to this. And yet it's being dragged down to the level of Sitra, Achra, and Klipa, the greatest concealment of godliness, when all the godly soul wants to do is be itself, which is to be godly. The root and source of every soul in the house of Israel is from the supernal Chachma, which we've been talking about. That's the Havas Mitzvah, which is so intimately bound with God that he and his Chachma are one. To take such a holy entity as a soul and drag it into sin is comparable to taking the king's head, dragging it down and dunking his face in a toilet full of excrement, okay? Full imagery here. There's no greater humiliation than that, even if a person does it just for a moment. That's what we're doing to our godly soul, right? We're saying, like, the king, taking the king's head and putting it in toilet bowl, right? That's disgusting. It's horrendous. It's degrading everything precious and dear and valuable. And that's exactly what we're doing to our soul. We're taking our pristine, beautiful soul that's so connected to its source, and we're literally dunking it in the spiritual toilet. We are literally taking it into an abusive state and saying, even though you don't want to go here, animal soul, godly soul, I'm dragging you down to the Klipa and Sitra Achra. I'm dragging you down to the world of concealment. And so what the Alter Rebbe is really doing here is he's allowing us to really have compassion on our soul, right? I love my soul. I want to take good care of it. I don't want to do that to my soul. So even though, yes, animal soul, right now you're being seduced into the sin, and right now you're being seduced into, like, just eat this one non-kosher thing and just say this one mean comment and just get angry at this one person right now and just steal this one thing. But you know what? My godly soul has no interest in that. And not only no interest, that is extraordinarily painful and degrading to the highest part of my being. And so this compassion is becoming a very powerful tool of how we're going to be able to resist sin, is through this compassion on ourselves. And that analogy is precise, right? That the analogy the Alter Rebbe brings. The analogy is a precise one, since the klip and sitracha are referred to as a vomit and excrement. Okay, so we have to understand that this is a complete degradation of our soul. We have to have Rahman's compassion on our soul, love for our soul. Thank you for taking the time to learn today's Tanya together.